But it's music theory, not music fact, and there are no rules.
It was 1991, and Eddie Van Halen stormed the stage at the NAMM show in Anaheim, California, standing proud beside a towering wall of shiny Peavey amps that looked like chrome thunder. The deal had already been sealed months earlier. Millions on the table, his signature amp line set to drop, global promo tours lined up, and the Peavey 5150 hyped as the next big explosion in rock sound. The amp was advertised as being built to Eddie's exact specs, but deep inside a locked room at his 5150 studio in Studio City sat 3 vintage Marshall Super Lead amps, still glowing hot from the night before. What Peavey's execs didn't know was that Eddie had just pulled off one of the slickest gear deceptions in rock history, a secret move he managed to hide for nearly a decade. Before we crack open this untold chapter, hit that subscribe button if you live for the real stories behind rock's biggest legends. We're talking about the truths that shaped music history, the ones meant to stay buried forever. Eddie's connection with Marshall amps was already the stuff of myth, even before Peavey ever entered the picture. Since 1978, when Van Halen's debut album melted minds across the world, guitar players everywhere became obsessed with uncovering the mystery behind the Brown sound. That tone was pure magic, smooth, screaming, and golden, like electricity turned to liquid fire. Eddie built it with a 1968 Marshall Super Lead head, a variac transformer to lower the voltage, and a few secret mods that he guarded tighter than a stage magician guarding his final trick. Those Marshall stacks weren't just amps to Eddie. They were part of his soul, his weapon, his identity, the heart of everything he ever played. But by the time the 90s rolled in, the music gear industry was changing fast. Endorsement deals were turning into massive money games, with companies throwing piles of cash just to link their brand names to guitar gods. Peavey Electronics, coming out of Meridian, Mississippi, had built a solid rep for making reliable, affordable gear, but they were missing that superstar sparkle. So when they approached Eddie with an offer that wasn't just about money, but also promised him full creative control to design his dream amp from the ground up, it felt like destiny knocking. The ink dried on that contract in late 1990, and by early 91, Peavey's top engineers were flying in and out of the 5150 studio non-stop. They were measuring circuits, tweaking tones, and chasing that legendary Brown sound like treasure hunters chasing gold. They wanted to trap lightning in a box, to mass-produce Eddie's magic tone for the whole world. Eddie had every move mapped out, down to the tiniest cable twist. His longtime guitar tech, the same loyal right-hand man who'd been by his side since the early 80s, was the gatekeeper to one of rock's most legendary secrets. Whenever Peavey reps were scheduled to drop by the 5150 studio, the Marshalls vanished like ghosts. They'd be rolled into storage, buried behind road cases and mountains of vintage gear hidden from any curious eyes that might wander too far. Every single time Peavey's crew showed up, the whole studio transformed into a full-blown stage act. Cables were rerouted, the signal chains swapped, everything set up to make it look like the sound was running through those Peavey heads. Even the control room monitors were rigged to show the Peavey logos lighting up like fireworks on the screen. It was theater at its finest, and Eddie was the star of the show, a rock legend playing the role of sound wizard to perfection. He understood the game better than anyone. Endorsement deals weren't about truth, they were about illusion. As long as Peavey believed their amps powered that famous Van Halen roar, everyone kept cashing checks and smiling for the cameras. By 1992, the Peavey 5150 finally hit the market, and to be fair, it was a total beast. Peavey's engineers went all in, building a high-gain monster with razor-edged attack and that scooped mid-punch that ruled early 90s metal. The 5150 became an instant hit. Bands from the rising nu metal wave like Deftones and Limp Bizkit swore by it, calling it their secret weapon. But here's the twist. The amp with Eddie Van Halen's own name on it barely had anything to do with the real tones he was crafting in the studio. The 5150 wasn't the revolution people thought it was. It was a master illusion, a marketing masterpiece wrapped in rock and roll smoke. Then the cracks began to show. The truth didn't leak from tabloids or rival brands. It slipped out quietly from the inside. Studio engineers who had worked with Eddie during those Peavey years started whispering on underground audio forums in the late 90s. One anonymous engineer even dropped a bombshell story from the Balance album sessions in 1995. According to him, Eddie had demanded total privacy during his guitar tracking. Nobody allowed in the room, no exceptions. But when that engineer snuck back in later to fix a mic placement, he froze. The Peavey head sitting proudly in the corner wasn't even plugged in. The cable ran straight into a hidden Marshall head tucked inside a road case with a fake front. The mics were aimed at a Marshall cab, not the shiny Peavey that looked ready for showtime. It was an illusion so smooth that even the studio regulars bought it. Eddie had built a smoke and mirrors setup worthy of a Hollywood heist movie. But behind all that trickery was the real secret. The reason no other amp could ever match his sound. It wasn't just nostalgia for his old Marshalls. It was science. You couldn't fake that kind of sound with modern circuitry, not a chance. Amps in the 90s were built for consistency, engineered to stay stable and predictable no matter what. Same tone in a club, a stadium, or a festival stage. But Eddie's Marshalls, they were wild animals, unpredictable, temperamental, and packed with soul that refused to be tamed. When those amps hit the sweet spot, the tubes would glow like fire and unleash harmonics so alive they almost breathed. No modern Peavey could ever match that energy. It was raw, dangerous, and electric. And here's the kicker. Eddie's Marshalls weren't factory stock by any stretch. Over the years, he tore them apart and rebuilt them like a sonic mad scientist. He scavenged variac transformers from old industrial gear, swapped tube layouts, and even bypassed entire circuit sections to chase that perfect tone. Each head was one of a kind, handmade creations that carried his fingerprint in every solder joint. They were the amp version of his legendary Frankenstrat, that patchwork guitar built from mismatched parts, rewired beyond recognition, and perfected through years of wild experimentation and obsession. Meanwhile, Peavey's engineers were chasing lightning in a bottle, but Eddie had already moved the bottle. By the late 90s, cracks in the illusion started to show. Around 1998, the tension between Eddie and Peavey hit a breaking point. The guitar world had been buzzing for years, rumors flying that Eddie still used his Marshalls in secret sessions, but Peavey didn't want to hear it. They were too busy counting profits from the massive success of the 5150 amp. Then came the spark that blew everything wide open. A Guitar Magazine interview dropped, and Eddie's own guitar tech casually mentioned that Eddie still tracked with his Marshalls whenever he wanted that classic Van Halen roar. Boom! The illusion shattered overnight. Panic hit Peavey HQ like a lightning bolt. Executives scrambled to control the narrative and demanded answers immediately. Within days, a high-stakes face-to-face meeting was set at Eddie's 5150 studio. Across the table sat Peavey's VP of Artist Relations, their chief engineer, and Eddie himself. Cool, calm, and unshaken as ever. According to insiders, he didn't even try to deny it. Instead, Eddie broke everything down with surgeon-like precision. He walked them through his entire signal chain, pointing out every detail, explaining exactly why the tones from his Marshalls and the Peavey 5150 were galaxies apart. He told them straight, the Peavey amp was great, but it wasn't his sound. That's when things got tense. voices raised, contracts thrown on the table, talk of breach of agreement, and even whispers of lawsuits flying around the room. The atmosphere was pure chaos. But in the end, Peavey blinked first. The 5150 was still selling like crazy, and Eddie's name was still pure gold in the market. They knew starting a public fight would backfire, so they chose to play it smart. A quiet truce was formed, subtle, strategic, and genius. From 1999 onward, every Van Halen promo still showed Eddie posing proudly beside the Peavey stacks. But the wording shifted. The ads no longer claimed he only used them. Instead, the copy got slick. Eddie Van Halen's signature sound replaced the sound of Eddie Van Halen. Clever, right? But the story didn't stop there, not even close. In 2004, Eddie made a power move that flipped the script completely. He cut ties with Peavey and joined forces with Fender to launch his own brand, EVH Gear. And here's the twist that had the whole guitar world buzzing. The first EVH amps, the 5153 models, were finally the real deal. These amps carried the DNA of his legendary hot-rodded Marshalls, the exact sound blueprint he'd been guarding for decades. They had everything: the separate gain stages, the sagging voltage from his signature Variac setup, and that thick, saturated growl that screamed pure Eddie. Guitar magazines instantly noticed the difference. The EVH 5153 didn't just sound different from the Peavey 5150. It felt different, alive in a way that only Eddie's true tone could be. The response was electric. Players could finally feel that wild, breathing energy that made Van Halen's sound so untouchable. Of course, the press didn't dig too deep into why it sounded that way. No one wanted to stir the pot. But for anyone who'd been paying attention, the truth was as clear as feedback in a live arena. This was the amp Eddie had always wanted to share, not the corporate copy from before. For the first time ever, he had created a production amp that actually represented his tone, not some polished, market-friendly imitation. And that's what makes this whole saga so fascinating. It's not just a tale about one of rock's most revolutionary guitarists. It's a peek behind the curtain at how messy the world of endorsements and authenticity really is. Thousands of guitarists had bought the Peavey 5150 believing they were holding Eddie's magic in their hands, and in a way they were. Just not the same magic heard on the records that made history. What they got was Peavey's version of Eddie's tone, cleaner, more reliable, more controlled. A well-behaved version of something that was never meant to be tame in the first place. Eddie's real sound was wild, unpredictable, alive, a storm of electricity that roared with chaos and emotion. That's what made it legendary. As for how fans felt when the truth finally bubbled up, that's still up for debate. Some didn't care. They swore the Peavey 5150 was still a killer amp that stood tall on its own, no matter what Eddie really used. But others? They felt straight up betrayed, convinced they'd been sold a dream wrapped in a lie. The revelation exposed just how complicated Eddie's relationship with the industry really was, torn between genius, inventor, and shrewd businessman. On one side, he was the fearless innovator who completely rewrote the rule book of rock guitar, a sound architect who built tones no one had ever imagined before. On the other, he was caught in the ruthless grind of the music business, a world where image and sales often mattered more than the truth. That Peavey endorsement, it wasn't just about tone, it was about survival. By the late 90s, Van Halen's album sales were dipping, and that massive Peavey deal kept Eddie's name glowing on magazine covers, gear catalogs, and music store walls across the world. It was a business lifeline disguised as a partnership. After Eddie's passing in 2020, his son Wolfgang finally pulled back the curtain. And what he revealed confirmed everything fans had whispered about for years. In interviews, Wolfgang described the legendary 5150 studio as a museum of amps, rows and rows of gear from every era of Eddie's career. He said his dad was constantly swapping between different amp heads depending on what track he was working on that night. But those Marshalls, oh, they were always in the mix, the true heart of the sound that made Van Halen immortal. Wolfgang said it straight. That's where Dad's sound really lived. The Peaveys were still part of the setup, sure, but they had specific jobs. Eddie would pull them in for tight rhythm layers or those razor-sharp high-gain solos that sliced through the mix like lightning. But when he wanted that warm, soulful tone, the sound fans knew by heart, he always went back to his modified Marshalls. It was like an artist and his favorite paintbrush. Sure, he had others that could get the job done, but that one brush just felt right. It wasn't about logic, it was pure emotion, a bond between a man and the tools that helped him speak through sound. That's what made Eddie's connection to his Marshalls so personal, almost spiritual. The Peavey 5150 saga became one of the most talked about stories in guitar history. A legend about illusion, loyalty, and the blurry line between what companies sell you and what the legends actually use. But here's the thing. This story was never just about deception or marketing tricks. It revealed something powerful about Eddie himself, the way he navigated a world that constantly tried to package and sell his genius. Eddie wasn't a sellout chasing cash, not even close. But he also wasn't some stubborn purist refusing to play the business game. He found that rare middle ground, a path that let him protect both his art and his livelihood. His secret wasn't greed, it was strategy. Eddie understood exactly how the music gear world worked, built on hype, image, and hero worship. By lending Peavey his name, his face, and his legacy, he gave them what they were really paying for, the image of Eddie Van Halen, the ultimate guitar god. And behind closed doors, he kept his creative process sacred, his studio, his rules, his magic. What happened at 5150 stayed at 5150. When Eddie passed away on October 6, 2020, the world stopped cold. Tributes flooded in from every corner of the planet. Rock stars, guitar heroes, lifelong fans, all united to honor the man who changed everything. They spoke of his fire, his innovation, and that otherworldly tone, the sound that nobody and no amp could ever truly bottle. They mentioned the Frankenstrat, the homemade guitars, the endless nights spent tweaking circuits and chasing perfection. They talked about his Variac-powered Marshalls that roared like living beasts, unstable, unpredictable, and alive with energy that could light up a stadium. That was Eddie Van Halen's real legacy, not in a brand deal, not in a polished endorsement, but in the chaos of creation itself. And when the world mourned him, something incredible happened. Almost no one mentioned Peavey. Despite nearly a decade of endorsement deals and massive 5,150 amp sales, those glossy corporate years barely earned a footnote in the obituaries. It was as if history itself decided to set the record straight. Those amps weren't clean or predictable, they were alive. They responded to Eddie like they knew him personally, bending under his touch, breathing with his every note. They didn't just amplify his sound, they felt him. Sure, the old Peavey 5150s that Eddie used in promo photos and a handful of sessions are still out there today, sitting in private collections like treasure. They sell for thousands, not because they hide some secret formula to his tone, but because they carry his fingerprints, his energy, his aura. They're relics of the show, not the soul behind it. The Frankenstrat, those Variac-powered Marshalls, and the endless late-night tinkering sessions that stretched until sunrise. That was the real Eddie Van Halen. His sound didn't come from boardroom deals or marketing campaigns. It was born from pure obsession, from sweat, passion, and a fearless drive to twist and reshape what a guitar could do. Eddie wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing feeling. And when the world said goodbye to him in 2020, something wild happened. Almost no one mentioned Peavey. Despite nearly a decade of partnership and the 5150 being everywhere throughout the 90s, the Peavey name quietly vanished from the narrative. It was like rock history itself decided to step in and correct the record. Every article, every tribute, every heartfelt message from fans and fellow guitar legends circled back to the same truth. Those roaring, unpredictable Marshalls and that homemade Frankenstrat were the real symbols of Eddie's magic. That says everything, doesn't it? Because Eddie's sound was never about convenience or loyalty to a brand. It was about feel. He didn't just play his gear. He fought with it, wrestled with it, and somehow made it sing like no one else could. His Marshalls weren't stable or easy to manage. They were moody beasts that only obeyed him. They'd hiss, hum, or blow a fuse at the worst possible moment, but when the stars aligned, they unleashed pure lightning, raw, explosive, and alive. Sure, those Peavey 5150s he used for promo shots and select recordings are now worth a fortune, proudly displayed in the homes of hardcore collectors and tone chasers. But let's be honest, they're not valuable because they hold some mystical secret to Eddie's tone. They're prized because he touched them, used them, owned them. They hold his energy, frozen in time, tiny pieces of his legend captured in metal and wood. But the real treasures, the true crown jewels of Eddie's kingdom, those are the battered old Marshalls, the ones with chipped panels, replaced tubes, and messy custom wiring that no tech could ever fully decode. Those amps were alive, the fire-breathing beasts that powered Eruption, Ain't Talkin' About Love, Panama, and every riff that shaped rock and roll forever. Most of them are locked away now, too sacred, too valuable to ever hit the market. They're not just amplifiers anymore. They're artifacts of genius, living proof of a man who rewrote what music could be. Each one is a piece of sonic history, proof that real magic can't be built in factories or boxed up for sale. And that's the biggest irony of it all. The Peavey 5150 was slick, successful, and built for the masses, but it was just the packaging. It was the polished mask of a man who lived for chaos, creativity, and experimentation, not corporate slogans. The truth of Eddie Van Halen's sound was never something you could mass produce or brand. It lived in his hands, in his instincts, in that raw spark between human and machine. So next time you see a 5150 amp or stumble across one of those old promo clips of Eddie grinning beside a Peavey stack, remember this. Behind that perfect marketing shot was a true artist, crafting his own universe out of wires, tubes, and raw passion. His tone wasn't just heard, it was felt. And if you love diving into the secret corners of rock history, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we've got even more explosive behind-the-scenes stories from the legends who shaped music forever. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.